Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. From the very first moment, you need to understand this. Not every pain you've experienced was an injustice. Some pain arrives to awaken you, and some people who entered your life, those who seemed to love you, were merely distorted mirrors reflecting the parts of you that remain unhealed. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I keep attracting manipulators? Have you ever thought the stronger I become, the more they try to break me down? You're not crazy, you're waking up. Carl Jung called this the moment when the shadow of another collides with the light of your awareness. And the inflated ego, the part of the self that thrives on control and admiration, feels threatened by you. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you dared to break the cycle. Something strange happens when you begin to heal. Not everyone will clap for you. In fact, the very people who once called you special may now call you selfish. They'll say you've changed, that you've become cold. But here's the truth: it is that very change, this inner movement that shakes the fragile foundation of their ego. The bringer of light is the awakener of darkness, and darkness never leaves without resistance. In Jungian psychoanalysis, the narcissist is the embodiment of an ego disconnected from the soul. They do not love you. They need you as a mirror, as a source of admiration, to fill the gaping void inside them. And when you stop reflecting that image, they begin to feel invisible. Have you noticed the moment you begin to set boundaries, they no longer appear strong? They become unusually fragile. They break down, they're hurt, they suddenly need you. But that's not love, it's a psychological game. One so subtle, even the most sensitive hearts can be deceived. Jung called it psychic possession, when the unacknowledged shadow takes full control, turning a person into an instrument of manipulation. But here's the awakening truth. These psychological blows don't happen by accident. They are calculated, and they often strike the moment you're about to cross a new threshold within yourself. So the question is no longer, do they love me, but rather, do they allow me to be myself? When you understand this, you'll realize that being manipulated didn't happen because you were weak. It happened because you had an open heart. And now your task is to learn how to keep that heart open with boundaries. As Florence Scovel Shinn once wrote, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. Believe that you are strong enough to step out of the old roles. In the next part, I will guide you deeper into the structure of the ultimate manipulation strategy, when the narcissist manufactures a crisis to lure you back into the role of savior, and why Jung believed that if you pass this test, you are not just free, you are reborn. Are you ready? If you've ever placed others above yourself, then now is the time to return. Not to the old self, but to the true self, whole, awakened, and no longer easily controlled. Keep going, the next door is already opening. There is a profound paradox in psychology that Carl Jung identified early on. The more inflated the ego, the emptier it is inside. And no figure embodies this phenomenon more clearly than the narcissist, someone who feeds on the gaze of admiration from others, yet panics at the thought of facing their own reflection. Jung called this the inflated egoe, self blown up like a balloon filled with illusion and denial. On the outside, they may appear confident, charming, in control. But beneath the surface lies a soul that has never truly confronted its fear of abandonment, its imperfection. In the darkness, it hides at all costs. And when you, the once loyal mirror, reflecting that illusion, begin to awaken, begin to set boundaries and love yourself, the balloon starts to crack. And when the inflated ego feels threatened, it doesn't retreat, it retaliates. Carl Jung once warned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This explains why the narcissist often employs their first tactic, strength shaming, making you feel guilty for the very qualities you work so hard to cultivate. You begin setting boundaries, they call you cold. You speak your truth, they call you disrespectful. You recognize your worth, they say you're arrogant. But what's truly happening is this: the unacknowledged shadow within them is trying to make you feel guilty for reconciling with your own. And if you waver, if you slip back into the old role, the forgiving one, the self-sacrificing one, the easily controlled one, they'll feel safe again. But that's not love. That's fear disguised as care. When the strength shaming no longer works, they pivot to the second tactic, nostalgic manipulation. I miss the old you, the one I fell in love with. It's a tactic aimed directly at your most vulnerable selves, the part that once felt valued only when living for others. But pause and reflect, do they truly miss you? Or do they miss the version of you they could control? According to Jung, this is a form of psychological time travel, pulling you into the past through selectively curated memories to lure you back into an old role. A familiar script where you sacrifice inner truth for the sake of false harmony. But the most insidious tactic is the final one: manufactured vulnerability. Jung once said, "Nothing makes the weak ego feel more powerful than making someone else feel guilty." And just when you are at your strongest, most grounded, most radiant, they suddenly become the one who needs you. They speak of illness, debt breakdown, or emotional crisis precisely when you're finding your footing. You have an open heart, and that's beautiful. But that very beauty is what they weaponize. The moment you bypass your own boundaries to help them one last time, you send two messages: one to them, that you're still easily manipulated, and one to yourself, that your truth still isn't worth protecting. Carl Jung called this the final test in the process of individuation, the journey of becoming your true self. And you don't pass it by fighting them. You pass it by remaining centered in your inner truth. As Florence Scovel-Shinn once wrote, "Silence is more powerful than words when it comes from inner certainty." And if you're somewhere along this journey, you are not alone. Leave a comment about what part of you is awakening. You can start with a simple sentence: "I'm learning to love myself without guilt." Let us share with one another, because in a world where the shadow often shouts, the loudest light needs allies. In the next part, we'll explore this deeper: why does the narcissist fear your healing like fire? And how can you not only escape the manipulation, but turn it into a crucible through which a new self is born, one no longer in need of approval, but rooted in inner depth? Keep going. This is no longer just a journey away from pain. It's a journey into becoming your own light. There is a truth few are willing to face. It's not just the narcissist who carries a shadow. Those who are easily manipulated also harbor an unacknowledged part of themselves. And it is precisely this unreconciled part, the part that constantly seeks approval from the outside, that becomes the invisible doorway through which manipulation enters. Carl Jung once said, "We all wear a mask, and it is that mask which we mistake for our true self." This is the persona, the social self that strives to please, to be kind, to avoid discomfort. But behind that mask lies a soul trembling before the fear of rejection. And in that vulnerable state, one becomes fertile ground for the roots of manipulation to take hold. Let's look more deeply into each manipulation tactic and the psychological defense mechanisms that lie beneath. When you begin to express personal power by setting boundaries or saying no, the narcissist makes you feel wrong for changing. This tactic targets your inner child, the one who learned early on that to be loved, I must be good. You regress into old behavior, hoping that kindness will make them change. But this is not love. This is the sacrifice of your identity in order to preserve a connection that never made space for your real self. Words like, "I miss the old you" are not sweet sentiments. They are selectively crafted memories, repeated like mantras, so that you begin to introject the belief that the old me was lovable. This new me is too much. And the moment you begin to doubt your own growth, you've fallen into the trap. Jung warned, if you do not become conscious, you will be lived by someone else's life. This is the most sophisticated tactic of all. The narcissist doesn't beg for your compassion. They gamble with manufactured vulnerability. Illness, crisis, accidents, breakdowns, all unveiled at exactly the moment you've regained your strength, designed to trigger guilt should you turn away. And if you say no, you're cast as heartless. But this is not the truth. This is an emotionally manipulated version of reality where you're being asked to abandon your awakening to heal someone else. According to Jung, those who are easily manipulated have not yet integrated their shadow, the parts of themselves that feel inadequate, angry, or unworthy, so they keep seeking validation from others to fill the void. You believe that if you're good enough, kind enough, forgiving enough, they'll finally change. But you were not born to trade your voice for love. You were born to be yourself, and from that wholeness, attract real connection. If you've fallen into these patterns, if you've ever questioned your own light because of someone else's words, know that you are not alone. Feel free to share below learning to live authentically without asking for permission. Let this be a space where you can be seen without performing a role. In the next part, we'll uncover another profound truth. The narcissist doesn't fear losing you. They fear losing their ability to make you doubt yourself. And when you understand that you won't just avoid the old traps, you'll transform into someone who can no longer be controlled through guilt. The journey isn't over, but the light has already begun to flicker from within. Keep going. You're not just escaping, you're coming home. When a narcissist calls out to you with tears, a trembling voice, and a perfectly timed crisis, your heart aches. And you wonder, if I walk away, am I failing to love? Carl Jung had a powerful concept for this exact moment: differentiated compassion. This is not the kindness that arises from an ego desperate for approval, nor the sacrifice rooted in a persona terrified of being disliked. It is the kind of love that flows from the self, the higher center of consciousness, where you understand that helping is not the same as saving, and loving does not mean self-erasure. Those who have not yet walked the path of reconciling with their shadow often confuse empathy with emotional codependency. They feel responsible for another's pain to the point of abandoning their own intuition and boundaries just to keep the peace. But as Jung warned, one who has not healed their own wounds will be ruled by the wounds of others. Pause. Place your hand over your heart. How many times have you said yes, not because you truly wanted to help, but because you were afraid of disappointing someone? How many times did you rush into the role of healer, even while you were bleeding yourself? Here are 3 steps to begin practicing differentiated compassion. 1. Pause before you respond. When someone shares their pain, be present without the immediate need to fix it. Ask yourself, am I being pulled into the role of savior? 2. Ask yourself, if I help, what part of myself might I lose? True love never demands the sacrifice of your boundaries. If you feel guilty for protecting your space, it may not be compassion. It may be programming from the past. 3. Offer presence, not solutions. The self knows you can accompany someone without carrying their weight. You can listen deeply without needing to rescue or repair. Journaling prompt: am I helping from lover, from the fear of being left behind? Write about a recent situation where you felt compelled to help someone. Record your true feelings. Was there fear, pressure? Ask yourself, if I had said no, what part of me was afraid of being seen? Identify the persona behind the behavior, perhaps the always kind one or the one who never lets others down. Shadow work suggestion. Write a letter you won't send to the part of your shadow that fears disappointing others, the part that feels guilt for setting boundaries. Let your higher self speak to it with compassion. I see you, the one who always tried so hard not to hurt anyone. But today I give you permission to choose yourself. If you're learning how to say no without feeling guilty, leave a comment. I'm learning to love with boundaries. We don't need to be perfect to be worthy of love, but we do need to be conscious to know when love becomes a chain. In the final part, we'll connect all the pieces. Why does the narcissist fear your awakening like fire? How can you keep a soft heart while standing firm against manipulation? And most importantly, how can every no you speak become a deeper yes to your true self? Because in the end, as Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you are on that journey not to be led by anyone else, but to be guided by the self from within. There is a moment that every healing journey points toward. Not the moment someone else changes, not the moment you defeat the manipulator, but the moment you step out from your own shadow and realize you have become someone entirely different. Not through noise, not through grand declarations, but through a quiet, sovereign shift. Like the image of the hero emerging from the cave, no longer needing light from the outside, because the light now radiates from within. Jung once wrote, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And if you're still reading these words, it means you have already taken that step, maybe slowly, maybe through tears, but you have stepped. You once believed that softness made you easy to manipulate. Now you know it was untamed strength. You once confused kindness with never setting boundaries. Now you see real kindness never asks you to betray yourself to be loved. You once wondered, will anyone love me if I stop pleasing everyone? Now you know the first person who must love you is you. If something in this video spoke to you, share a reflection you'd like to hold on to, or simply write, "I have stepped out of the cave." Each comment becomes a small flame in the night, and perhaps someone lost in the dark will see it and find their way home. If this feels like a space you want to return to, not to be fixed or judged, but to truly see yourself, click subscribe. Not because you need a leader, but because you deserve a community, one where soul growth is honored, where light and shadow are not enemies but companions. To close today's journey, imagine this. In a valley cloaked in the long shadow of a storm, there lies a small stone glowing. It's not artificial light, it is the philosopher's stone, a symbol of the self awakened only after you've walked the full path through darkness. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy. You simply need to return to yourself, whole, free, and awake.